now that we've completed the dream sequences of Book 7 and have got a little bit more information on all of our favorite boys, I think it's about time for me to officially rank where everyone stands. And what could be better than a tier list video than a sleep-deprived, unscripted tier list video? I know, such a surprise, but here we are today with all of our lovely boys in all of their finery, ready to be ranked by me based on my personal preferences and the new information that is available to me because of the dreams of Book 7. You should not listen to this if you are not in the Book 7 dreams and don't want to have stuff spoiled for you about certain characters that are very important in those dreams, so be aware of that. We also have a few event characters here, which I may or may not rank, who knows? But where shall they be placing today? What are they trying to covet? Well, we have the disappointment tier for anyone who is a disappointment, and the word was too long to fit on one line, and it gave me the red squiggle for how I had it correctly spelled, so now there's just a mint there, and it's green, so I guess that's fitting. Next up, we have nah, for the people that I'm just like, nah. Not today. No thank you. We also have mid for people that I couldn't care less about, or that just, don't strike me either way. They're not a nah, but they're also not a fancy potato. Or a chaos bean, which is totally not named that for a certain individual that is most likely going to be getting in that tier. Now then, first on our list is Grim, our little guy. Boy, oh boy, Mr. Grimathy himself. I like Grim a lot more now than I did when I started the game. When I started the game, he was just a little pest. I hated him and his attitude so much. But I think because of proximity, he's grown on me quite a bit. I feel like Grim is a delightful toddler that I am so happy that I don't personally have the responsibility of taking care of, but it is great to get to hang out with him and play games. So I think based off of that, I've grown to like him a bit more. And there are certain events like the Stitch event where he nearly drowns trying to save us, or like in Book 6 when he has his moments of clarity and he's like, I don't want to hurt anyone, especially not you. Those sorts of things tugged at my heartstrings enough, I think, to put Grim in mid. He's cute, he's there, he's also at times insufferable, and as much as I like hanging out with him when we do get to hang out with him in his good moments and he provides a lot of comedy, he's not for me. He's really not. He's not. But he's not a nah, and he's not a disappointment. He has moved up in the ranks, so that's good for him. Next up is Ace, who I dunk on so much because I knew that he had such good potential. I knew that he could achieve great things, and he never would. He purposefully would stop himself from doing this. And I understand for plot reasons that if his special magic had manifested any other time than it did in Book 7, that we would have massive, massive consequences on a global scale for the shenanigans that he would be getting up to with that magic. I get it. But it caused me so much frustration. However, what I can say is that it, in the end, became such a cathartic moment to see him finally stepping into the power that he's had all along, that he's just been a little too afraid to channel. And for him to do that in that moment and wake Riddle up was just so... It was just so impactful to me. I never truly hated Ace. He just frustrated me so much. He was firmly in disappointment tier until this happened. Because of this and because of what has happened, he's a fancy potato. I don't make the rules. He's a fancy potato now. He still has a lot of growing to do, but I like him so much more because of what happened in Book 7. It was just such a good character-defining moment. It was so good for his growth. And despite him being a character that we have had interactions with for a very long time, it didn't really feel like he was growing at all. It felt like he was getting left behind. And his dream, I think, showed part of why that was. And then Riddle's dream just showed him moving forward from that. And God bless him. Cater, immediately, Chaos Bean. 100%. There's no... I never thought about Cater until Book 7, to be honest. Cater was kind of an afterthought. But the more that I've researched him for videos and the more that I've kind of gotten to know him a little bit more outside of like, haha, he's a little edgy because he's a little sad, there is so much more depth to Cater than I think I ever gave him credit for. There is so much more awareness to him. There is so much more maturity than I thought existed in his character. And I don't really know the full reason for it. And I think I am so far outside of his own experience of having to deal with being in the shadow of other people in my family or having to constantly move to not make friends. Like those sorts of things are very foreign to me, so I don't want to speak on them too much, but I do think that the way that they inform his character is somewhat realistic from conversations I've had with other people. And I just feel like he is a gosh darn fantastic chaos being. He really is. The way that he handles the whole situation with Ace, the way that he handles the situation in his dream, the fact that he wakes himself up and just can immediately recognize that this is not how this is supposed to be, and I need to not be in this state anymore. Chef's kiss. Chef's kiss. When I have no words. He left no crumbs. And I think it had such an impact on me because we don't get to see quite as much of this in book 1 with him. It's more so focused on Trey and the freshmen. Cater's kind of there, and he is involved, but he's more of a standby kind of guy. So the more recent chapters and the more I've gotten to know him a little bit through that and through looking up things for other reasons, he's a chaos being through and through. He's welcome to the club. Riddle, 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 riddle now. Speaking of Riddle, I don't know what to do with Riddle anymore. Initially thought that he was making a lot more progress than he clearly did, although this can be said for any of the Overblock characters because when we get to see them in the dream, it is a very distorted version of the world where they never had to endure the trauma that they endured, and so they are basically completely different people. In Riddle's case, he is entirely a different person. And while that is lovely for him, there's still this need to control. And that definitely plays into the dream that he ends up going into, where he's literally about to cut off the actual heads of the people that he loves, just so he can stay in La La Land, which is terrifying. Very Queen of Hearts coded. Love that for him, but also a little terrifying. It is very similar to Ace's dream, but it's a lot more survival coded in a visceral way to me. I don't know if that makes any sense, but Riddle seems to be very passionate, whereas Ace was a little bit more deflective in their wanting to be safe. So there's that. Although I do still think, despite everything, Riddle is a very enjoyable character. I love how strict he is. That is very funny at times. Although I do feel very sad whenever he is on screen and he talks about his childhood. He has a lot of good qualities. He has a lot going for him, but I think personally, at this point in time, he's been demoted to mid. He's way above Grim, but he's not a fancy potato anymore, and he's not a Chaos Bean anymore. When I first started the game, Riddle and Azul were the two characters I wanted the most. Funny how they do it together. But nowadays, I just really can't be bothered to care about Riddle enough. I do like his design a lot, and I feel like that's going to be very hypocritical because I did buy 2 separate figures of him when I was in Japan. but his design is different from his character, I think, in that regard. And I also could not find any of the other Nandroids by the time that I found Riddle, so, you know. That aside, Riddle's in mid. Love the character design, love him, but, like, he's just not it. Deucey Goosey, Deuce just brings a smile to my face for no reason. Anytime I think about Deuce, I'm like, oh, it's him. I just want to give him egg sandwiches. I want to take care of him. I don't know why exactly. I think it's because he's such an earnest little guy, and he's just so about being an honor student, and he's just so about wanting to be a better person and better himself and not make his mom cry, you know, make her proud and all that kind of stuff that he's just too cute. He's just too cute. I want to just give him, I want to wrap him in a blanket and make sure he's safe. I love him a lot. And I love how, like, that desire has propelled him forward into becoming a better version of himself. Not just because of the honor student aspect, but also because of him protecting the people that he cares about as well. I think his character growth off screen when he was a delinquent really shaped the Deuce that we get to know. But Deuce, in a way, I think just represents a lot of stability and a lot of things that I enjoy. And the fact that he like got his special magic from protecting Epel, and the fact that his special magic is really just about reflecting and protecting, and even he isn't fully aware of how useful it is because in Glorious Masquerade, he's super surprised that Azul would want to have it for a little bit. He's like, what, really? Okay, but he's trusting in a way that just is so sweet, and he's considerate in a way that's just so nice. Taking our bags when we're shopping. He's just so sweet. He's so sweet. He's a little pumpkin. He's also a fancy potato. He's a little bit above Ace because I've liked him for quite a bit longer. But they get to hang out together now in fancy potato tier. Trey is just a disappointment. Trey's down there. I appreciate the fact that Trey is a big brother. I feel like Trey has no accountability, and I fear that even after his dream, it just doesn't seem like he's prepared to take on responsibility in a real way. Like, he can obviously handle Riddle very well, but being able to handle someone well and being able to call them out and actually help them grow are two separate things that can coincide, but I don't think Trey's really gotten to that other path yet. He feels very handlery still, and he has had a lot of trauma along the way. Like, it is not going to be like a one and done process. I understand why Trey is very hesitant to actually interact with Riddle in those ways, but I do think that that bleeds into the rest of the cast, and I do think that despite him being perceptive and despite him not being a doormat, as we can see in other instances, he's also like not proactive in the ways I expect him to be. And his base art does him no favors. This frat boy smirk that he has going on with his trilby hat is just not a vibe. It's not a vibe. No, sir. Stop. That being said, he does bake really good treats. He is a caring family man. He's got those younger siblings that he likes to take care of occasionally whenever that is relevant to any part of the story. And, you know, he is a decently nice guy who does look out for people, but he is still very much like it's almost kind of selfish, if that's the right word, which is something wild to critique him for given the entirety of NRC. But at the same time, I just feel like that's the vibe that I get from him. He's just trying to scoot by so that he doesn't have to deal with any true problems. And even though now the book one situation is kind of resolved, even in his dream, it didn't really feel like anything happened to him. Like, he didn't even have Riddle as his house warden. He legitimately was just like, no, Riddle's off on his own doing fine. I'm just gonna keep baking in my little space. And Chenya's here for reasons. It was just very strange to me. And I cannot justify liking him. I cannot even justify putting him in the not tier. I just am very disappointed with him, for reasons that I probably did not articulate properly, but that is where he's going to stay. Ruggie Bucci, Mr. Ruggie himself, Mr. Mikey, as my dad called him. He is going into Chaos Bean tier. I don't know whether or not to put him above Cater. I think him and Cater are kind of equal. I love Ruggie a lot, and I don't talk about him enough, I fear. I love his tenacity. I love his go-getter spirit. I love the fact that despite everything, he has such a positive attitude. He has so much faith in Leona. He has so much faith in the world and being able to make the world a better place. At least from what we saw in his dream and how I've decided to interpret his dream, that's how it seems. He's just delightful. I really did not understand in book 2 why he stayed by Leona's side. And that I don't think is a failing of Ruggie. I think that's a failing of the writing team because book 2 is a hot mess. And I guess they were still trying to figure out the right balance of referencing the source material versus not referencing the source material, because book 1 felt like it had a good balance of reference versus it being its own thing. Book 2 was just so shoehorned Lion King. They shoehorned the Lion King into any single reference they could have, and it didn't make any sense. And I think that Ruggie, Jack, and Leona all fall short because of that. Like, all of their characters got impacted because of that. However, Ruggie stood out to me the most from them. And even though I didn't like how it happened, I could almost excuse Ruggie because I knew why the hyenas aligned with Scar. And because of that association, and because book 2 was so heavily Lion King, he got a pass where Leona and Jack didn't. And I think that kind of helped him stay in my favor for much, much longer, despite him constantly ruining my pity. What's that about, buddy? We're both broke. You should know better. But outside of that, like he just is a delight. I love his spirit. I love his positivity. I just love him. He's another one I want to wrap in a blanket and feed. I want to give him all of the donuts he could possibly desire. He's just a little cutie. But I've liked him for a little bit longer than Deuce. And his positivity, I think, kind of outweighs the innocence of Deuce. In my mind, just put him in that little chaos bean tier. Just knock him into another tier. Jack-a-boy. Jack's gonna go in mid-tier. He is still above Grim. I feel like everyone's gonna be above Grim in mid-tier. Jack is okay. Like, he's just kind of there. Jack does not get a lot of treatment. Jack does not get a lot of character development outside of his birthday cards, I fear. He is a good bean, and he does love his friends, and he doesn't want them to know that, but he still does love them. He's still, like, I think the problem with Jack is he's still very young, so his motivations are very kind of like poignant into one basket, and that basket is something that is not super relatable to me. So I can't connect with him in the same way that I can connect with other characters. Like, I have no interest in sports. I have no interest in becoming the beefiest, bulkiest person alive to be able to tackle any physical challenge. I don't care. My level of fitness goal is to make sure that I don't die and that I don't have overly achy knees. That's kind of it. Jack is not that. Jack is constantly trying to improve himself, but in that realm, and he has a very strict personal moral code that is delightful and a nice contrast to the other people at NRC, but it is also something that is still self-serving in a lot of ways. So because of this, I can't really connect to him in the way that I can with the other characters, and he just doesn't get a lot of screen time outside of like book 2 and book 3. And in book 3, he's just kind of there to make the other freshmen look a little dumb and to reveal to Azul that we're hiding under his desk. Like, that's kind of the role that Jack plays. He also does get us into Savannah Claw. I guess that's pretty important because of how book 3 resolves. So I guess that's me downplaying him a little bit there. But like, outside of that, like that's really the only time that we interact with him in a meaningful way. Because book 4, he doesn't really exist because it's during the winter break. Book 5, he doesn't really exist because he's not part of the NRC tribe. Book 6, he doesn't exist because he's not part of the thing that happens off campus. Book 7, he exists in his dream, but it is also him kind of like having this idea of Leona being better and having Savannah Claw be better. And that's all still kind of tied to his personal moral code and his goals. So he still feels similar. So he's mid. Leona's just a disappointment. Leona's a disappointment, but he's much better than Trey. I was so excited for book 2. And then book 2 happened, and I hated Leona for like a year and a half afterwards because I could not fathom why he did the things that he did outside of, well, they needed to connect him to Scar, so they gave him a Mufasa. And I hated that aspect because I did not understand what he was doing with Malleus or why he hated Malleus so much, because we really don't know who Malleus is at that point in time. Like, we know who he is, but we don't have any interaction with him to really understand his character at all. So all we know is that Leona is just pissy because he can't win a sports game. He's gonna try to kill someone over a sports game. To me, that seemed like so immature, and it didn't line up with the fact that Leona is 20. Leona in the US can almost buy alcohol. He could almost go to the bar. There is no reason for him to have that kind of a petty lot at that age. If he was also like, 17, 18, maybe I can understand it. A lot of the characters are young, but he's supposed to be the oldest, and he got hung up on probably one of the stupidest things in my mind, because I am not a sports person, that he possibly could have gotten hung up on. But then we get the rumination, and then about a year and a half later, I kind of felt like I knew what was happening with him, the projection that he potentially could be having with putting his emotions towards his brother onto Malleus because of Malleus's station, the fact that he's a little bit more responsible than he lets on with the kiddos that are in his care and wanting them to succeed, even though he maybe can't, at least in this particular spell drive example. And the constant feelings of not being good enough or no having your effort not be enough for anyone that you want it to be enough for, that took me a while to realize with him. And then cloud calling happened, and then that sort of stuff became way more apparent with his interactions with Neji and the way that he just like subtly cares about his homeland and subtly likes some of the stuff, but he vocally is very against it. Same thing when he gets his internship in book 7, and then in his dream, it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy where he believed that he couldn't be good enough, and therefore it ended up affecting his dream world, even though it was supposed to be happy. It just got way too out of hand way too quickly because he could just foresee all of those choices and all of the people not liking him, I guess. Or like, you know, the continuation of the pain that he had suffered, leading to something that was very similar to The Lion King, but it was done in a much more fantastical way. Thank you, writers, for learning from your mistakes. Because the way that Leona ended up in his dream was similar to Scar, but it had a lot more of Leona in it. The set dressing was Lion King, but the characterization was still Leona. And because of that, and because of the scene with him and Neji at the end of his dream sequence after he fights himself and him kind of coming to this of a realization about his own struggles, I guess, as all of the Overblood boys do in their own ways at the end of their segments, that felt good to me. That felt like they were making up for what happened in book 2, and it was enough of a shift in Leona's character to make me start to appreciate him more. So Leona has graduated from a disappointment to mid-tier, and he's a little bit above Riddle, because I really appreciate the nuances with his character a much more now, and I can appreciate his talents a little bit more now than I did in the past. And part of that was because I was just stuck hating him. And part of it is now because I have moved past that, but also they have given him a much better story, so to speak, with his dream and with kind of resolving all of the loose threads that were there from book 2. So he's mid. Floyd's a chaos bean. I don't think anyone wouldn't have seen that one coming. Floyd is just so delightful. And while we're at it, why don't we just put Jade and Azul up there as well? Why not? Why not? I don't know where to put them. Well, we all know that Azul is my favorite liege twin, right? So, oh gosh, where do I start with Octavinelle? Could we just load them together? Because we're gonna be here for like 3 hours if I have to talk about them all separately. Octavinelle, to me, as a concept, is so fun. I love the sea. I wanted to be a marine biologist. Funnily enough, I don't really like The Little Mermaid all that much. Kind of wild. But I love Octavinelle. I love their 1920s aesthetic. I love their mobster attitude. I love the suits. I love the hats. It works so well. And the way that the characters are just fits in with the vibe so well. And that is technically the case with most of the characters, right? Because they're all kind of made to fit into those areas. But Octavinelle is just on another level to me. Floyd, fantastic. Chaos Bean incarnate. He is everything that I have ever desired in a card. Bean Boy Floyd gets me so far in all of the things that have ever happened in Twisted Wonderland. It is one of my favorite cards in the game for that reason. Jade, fantastic. Beautifully different from Floyd. The two of them together are just so drastically different, but the same at the same time. Like, Jade is so calm and reserved and gentlemanly, and Floyd is just out there doing whatever the hell he feels like at full volume. And yet, both of them are a little sadistic. Both of them still crave chaos. They just go about it in vastly different ways, and it makes them both so delightful. And then we have Azul, who's kind of caught in the middle, but that's by his own choice, so we can't really feel bad for him. And he's also kind of in that morally gray area with his contracts and exploitation and all those sorts of things as well. They're all so fun. And they all have wonderful characterization, not only within their book, but also in the book 7 Dreams. Floyd being bored out of his mind is such a vibe. Jade giving us derpy Floyd and handsome Azul, handsome Squidward. Fantastic. And then we have Azul reliving High School Musical. Just the three of them, hands down favorite. They are the top of Chaos Bean tier. They are the Chaos Bean incarnate. They just, I love them so much. And I have not explained very well for any of them, but again, to stop myself from having this video be completely about Octavinelle, I think I'm going to stop here. If you have come to the streams, you understand, I'm sure. If not, I could make a full-length video on them, honestly. But we're gonna go to Kalim. We're moving on to Kalim. Kalim, where are you? Kalim is a fancy potato. I like Kalim a lot. Kalim is a little too oblivious for me, but he's also just so sweet, and he creates these fantastical moments that just are unparalleled. The fact that throughout Playful Land, Mr. Kalim was 100% on board to throw a party for Ernesto to convince him to stop being a bad guy. And no matter what anyone said, Kalim could not conceive of any other plan. Peak. Absolute peak. And Kalim too has gone through a little bit of his own sort of reflection period where he is now a little less oblivious. He is now a little more considerate of other people. And he still has this sort of forced positivity, I think, in a lot of situations because he chooses to see the good in the world that can get in his way and can get in the way of others. But I think he's starting to learn how to balance that. And it's not going to be an overnight process at all. It never was going to be. And the fact that he and Jamil were able to have that confrontation in Jamil's dream, where the two of them were just able to fight it out and kind of get all of their emotions out on the table and get all the info out on the table and just dive into the meat of their problems to try to resolve them, or at least create a path forward, and now have the sort of a game plan structure of how to do that because of that interaction, I think is fantastic. And I think the fact that Kalim is not like so oblivious to that he's like, oh, it's fine. He understands and he knows at this point. But he also is just Kalim. He just is a ball of sunshine. He just is someone that remains positive. He is still someone that is going to need Jamil's help for probably a very long time, but is now going to do so a little bit more ethically, perhaps, than he had in the past. And having that sort of learning process for him is fantastic. It's great. I love that for him. Jamil is a little harder for me to place. I appreciate Jamil's journey. I understand his circumstance, and I do not want to detract from the pain that he has felt and from the experiences that he has gone through to get him to the point where he is at. And I understand the soul-crushing nature of Kalim just showing up at the school and taking everything from Jamil that Jamil has ever wanted. He was finally free of Kalim, and now he's not. I also am terrified of him because of his lingering resentment. He does, for the majority of Twisted Wonderland, he does not let go of or try to work out this resentment, even when Kalim is a bit more receptive to him. He does make steps forward in book 5, but we also get confrontations with him and Leona in book 6, where Jamil really isn't over it. And Leona could pick up on that and calls him out for that. And I think that moment is very important for Jamil's character growth. And I do think that he needed to be called out because he just like refused to let go of the full resentment. And I think the way that it got broken in his dream, or at least transformed into a different kind of energy, was very important for him and very impactful, I think, for the relationship going forward. Again, the fact that the two of them were able to just kind of dish it out with one another and get everything on the table and create a framework for how to move forward, even if it is not fully fleshed out. There's not like 5 actionable steps to repair our relationship. They still have a way forward, the two of them. But I think because Jamil was just so stuck for so long with so much resentment, he legitimately scares me. Because I know people that are like him, and I have had experiences with people that are like that just will hold on to resentment no matter what. And they're always terrifying. From what I have experienced with people like this, sometimes the complaint is legitimate. In Jamil's case, he has a lot of legitimate concerns. However, some people that hold on to that resentment for too long end up in a worser state, so to speak. And that gets taken out on everyone around them, not just the person that they're resentful towards, which is very similar to what happens in book 4 when he takes it out on literally everyone in the dorm, nearly getting people killed just so that he can get back at Kalim. Not great. In his dream, he takes over Kalim's whole family, which is probably not that healthy of a thing to do. Again, there's a bit of Malleus finagling things here as well, but I'm just gonna put him in Nah. I appreciate his character. I understand where he's coming from, and I do think that his journey is very good, especially for the types of things that he is dealing with, for sure. But I just don't like him. And it's really that resentment that I don't that I just can't get over. And that's on me. That's because of me. He's not my favorite. He's not a disappointment per se. He's really not a disappointment. Jamil is fantastic in a lot of ways. There's just like that edge. There's just like that little bite. Which I think makes a lot of sense for his character again, but it's just no. Not for me. Oh, Vil, another Chaos Bean for the Chaos Bean tier. My gosh, Vil Schoenheit. Similarly to Leona, I really didn't understand why Vil did the things that he did in book 5 because I really didn't understand his description of why he did it after he did it. Contrary to Leona, though, I was so delightfully surprised by the way that they characterized Vil and was so happy they didn't put him into a stereotypical box of like the vain celebrity that kind of made up for it. Like, I didn't fully understand where he was coming from, but I could chalk that up to not understanding the experience. And I think perhaps because I don't know a lot about Snow White, the references were not super, like, they weren't overly handed to you. And also by this point in time, I think the writers had a lot more practice about how to properly balance these sorts of things by the time that they got to book 5, and the way that book 5 kind of progressed kind of showed the signs, but it wasn't just like pure jealousy on Vil's part. He wasn't purely jealous of Nej, he still had a goal in mind. And while that goal was fueled by jealousy, honestly, who among us can't say that they've been fueled by spite at some point in their lives? Like, that's a very normal thing, I feel like, a very normal sort of energy to use and then to sort of become more and to get your goals accomplished. At least nowadays, I feel like spite is considered a little bit more proactive than in the past. At least if you use it in the context to further better yourself, like using that as energy to propel yourself forward and get your own goals done. And I think that the way that book 5 frames Vil has a lot of that in his actions and how he progresses. Tapis Rouge just reinforced this 110%. I don't like how that event ended. I think that the ending was a big cop-out, but I do like the fact that, like, Vil's character is very consistent. He puts in the effort and he understands the effort, and he can recognize the effort in others regardless of their aesthetic or regardless of any of their physical attributes. Like, if you are putting in the work, you get Vil's respect. If you do not put in the work, then you're on the chopping block. You can't cheat your way there, and I think there's a lot of him feeling like Nej cheated his way there in some aspects, even though he knows deep down that that's not the case. And then we get to his dream, where he is exactly what I had feared they would do to his character before I got to know him, and it was such a trip. It was not, and it gave me such a visceral feeling of like, this is not Vil. And I think that just speaks to how well they wrote him before then and just how different his dream self was in that context. Like, Vil kind of became this person that felt entitled, because I don't think that Vil currently, in the way that we know him, is super entitled. He just is. He's just very passionate about the work that he does. And because of the effort aspect, I think, especially, he does not come across as entitled. He was super entitled in his dream. 110%. And getting him to wake up and realize those sorts of things was just nice because boy, oh boy, was he pissed about it after he found out. Good Lord, is Malleus in for a whole lecture. Cannot wait for that to happen. Rook Hunt, Chaos Being Extraordinaire. Chaos Beat. I can't put him above Octavinelle because I don't want to reveal who my favorite actually is in that dorm, but he is on another echelon. And I have no idea, absolutely no idea, when my brain chemistry switched. I used to feel nothing at all for Rook. I was like, oh, he's cute, he's eccentric, he's there, cool for him. Nowadays, Rook is the bestest bean. Anytime Rook is on screen, I'm having a delightful time. I cannot understand half of what he says, but he is there and he is proud and he just is such a vibe. Love him for that. Love his dedication. Love a dedicated guy. Fantastic for him. His dedication to Nej and to Vil both. And to pretty much everything that he puts his heart to. His hunting, his photography, 10 stars. He is creepy, but his charisma just negates that completely. I guess it's just that he's just too charismatic. He's too charismatic. He is too charismatic and he has just become so much more impactful to me. Book 6, I think his drive and desire to go find Vil and then to be able to be so helpful in that book is something that really stuck with me more so than how he acted in book 5. Because again, I wasn't sure exactly why Rook didn't say anything to Vil or didn't try to impact him at all. Book 6, it became a little bit more clear what their relationship was. And now in book 7, having his dream and having him just so enthusiastic about Vil and Nej, and then him coming to terms with life because he remembered the SDC and because of all the struggles that happened with that. It just felt so right. And then for him to be helping out in the way that he was helping out was just fantastic as well. I don't know. He's just such a delightful character to me now. And I cannot pinpoint exactly when that happened. I really can't. I don't know if it was during book 6. I don't know if it was during book 7. I don't know if it was during an event. I'm trying to remember if what events Rook has been a part of. I really don't know. I don't know, but he's a Chaos Bean now. He's a Chaos Bean. He's there. He's proud and he's hanging out with Jade. Epel guy. Epel. Boy. Where do I put? I'm gonna put you in mid. I feel very similarly to Epel as I do Jack. I like Epel as a character. I like the Spitfire guy that he is. I enjoy his tenacity in that way. I just don't really care about him. Like, I understand his character. I know why he's there. I like his journey of understanding that, like, beauty is not a weakness, and that, like, physical strength and physical muscles are not the only way to have strength. I enjoy that journey that he is on. I enjoy Harveston quite a bit. Harveston was one of my favorite events for a really long time. I just don't think about him anymore. If I'm thinking about TWST, I think about, like, the Chaos Bean tier guys first, and then maybe the fancy potatoes. And then that's kind of it. So he's really not stuck with me or been impactful in any way that I've really cared to remember. And like his dream was just cursed. So he's just gonna chill here. Although I will give him props for being able to wake up Rook. I will give him props for having the idea for the SDC and then going and doing that and then having that be how Rook wakes up. Props to that. But that's immediately demoted because of your dream. So mid-tier, he stays. Idia. I think Idia is gonna go in fancy potato tier. He's a little bit of a fancy potato. Just a little bit. I enjoy his sarcastic quips. I love we have a little gamer that can give us gamer references. I love that he breaks the fourth wall. I love that he's a bit sassy, as he should be, since he's twisted from Hades. But I don't think about him quite as much as some of the other people. He's definitely closer to Chaos Bean tier, but he's not quite there yet. He's not quite there. Like, he's an enjoyable character. I love his quips. I understand where he was coming from in his story and how he was able to get to the point where he was in his dream. I love that he was able to just like completely reclaim his own power, so to speak, in his dream when he fought his shadow self / OG Ortho / I have no idea who that was. It was like a combination of a lot of different factors happening at that point in time. And it was also quite a long time ago. So at this point, I don't fully remember exactly how that went. But the fact that he has been so hard at work, we've had so many good character interactions with him throughout book 7 because of the important role that he is playing. Because the poor boy is about to get cooked by Mal. That poor boy. Him and Riddle are in it deep at this point in time. That moment was so delightful. The fact that he's bringing the sword and the shield in from Sleeping Beauty, iconic. He just is very fun. He frustrates me a little bit with his introverted nature because I used to be like that and I know exactly what he's doing, and boy oh boy do I not want to remember those memories. But I do like where he's going. I like his trajectory. I like where he's probably going to be at by the end of book 7. And the fact that he now actually kind of has some more, I guess friends isn't the right word, but he's definitely more acquainted with most people on campus, and he's definitely, I think, perceived a little bit better because of this whole experience. So that's good for him. Love that for him. Hope that he gets everything he wants in life, including a cat. Ortho, on the other hand, is going in mid-tier. And I know, I put a lot of freshmen in mid-tier. I know. In fact, all of them besides Ace and Deuce and Sebek, who we have not gotten to yet, are in mid-tier. But Ortho fills a very specific role in a very specific niche, and even though he is optimistic like Kalim, I do not find him as delightful. Ortho can be a little sassy. Ortho, I like I like Ortho most when he's interacting with Idia. When the two of them are like playing off of each other, that is super fun. That interaction is delightful when Ortho is just busting Idia's chops. Or in the Tangled event when they are giving Riddle the puzzle and the two of them are kind of playing off of each other to be little pieces of poop. It's a great time. Anytime that Ortho is with other people though, I don't feel the same because I feel like he's very much stuck in that archetype of like little brother that helps. Even though like he's still learning how to be a person. So like he doesn't fully have his own personality, I guess, in that way. I don't know. I think he gets lumped in with Epel and Jack partially because of that. Like I really liked him during book 6 when he's learning kind of about himself and starting to gain sentience. And I like that he has gained sentience and that he is playing a very important role in book 7. But the role that he's playing is very supporty. It doesn't feel like he's actually like interacting or affecting things as much as I suppose he is. And he just seems like the same character that we got introduced to way back in the day. Like he's been a very, very consistent, which is good in some ways, but it's just not enough to put him in any other tier for me. Mal though, Chaos Bean. He's currently creating such a grand chaos across the world. What a time it is. Malleus to me is very relatable in a very similar way to Azul, which I didn't touch upon for reasons I have already stated. But Malleus is very, very important to me in that way. Like I can connect to him a lot more than I think some of the other kiddos because of the things that affect him, or the things that I think are affecting him deeply. Like the loneliness per se. Those sorts of things I can connect to quite a bit. Also, he is just dragon. That's kind of cool. He's very sweet with the prefect, although I don't think he fully understands how relationships work, because I think he got very, very tied to us from only having like 2 or 3 interactions, but that's also very relatable. He tries his best. He tries his best, but he's also like doesn't understand. And so I cannot help but feel like he is just a little baby that is trying to learn how the world works. Which aren't we all? Aren't we all children just trying to figure out how the world works? We don't really know him that well, though, because this entire book has been mainly focused on everyone but him, outside of the fact that he is currently trying to end the world in his own special way. So there is that. But really the things that we know that are really concrete about him are the loneliness, trying to understand humans but not really fully getting it, the fact that he is super powerful, and the fact that he is kind of ostracized for something that he doesn't really have full control over. Like, he didn't choose to be this powerful. He didn't choose to be one of the top 5 mages in all of Twisted Wonderland. But he is here now like that, and I think because of the environment of NRC, that really does play into the issues that he faces. Glorious Masquerade and Violet Sky both. He just kind of gets to exist and experience things, and he doesn't have all that weight on his shoulders. And when he's in those environments, he's quite fun. Like finding out he's never rode in a car before and having everyone panic over that. Having him be so delighted that every single merchant in the city wants his business, and Kalim is just panicking. Glorious Masquerade, the goat, and him having a wonderful time. Sebek getting his coffee instead of him. Like, all of these little moments I think are just so fun. And the way that Malleus reacts to them being so calm and tempered is great. He's very introspective. Silver's also a mid-tier. I hate to say it, but he's very close to being a fancy potato. I am withholding my judgment until book 7 finishes. I think he's going to play a very important role because he is the Aurora twist and Malleus is the Maleficent twist, and we have the Sword of Valor and the Shield of Truth, I think are their names. So we are going to have him play some sort of role in that. I just want to know how that resolves before I make a final judgment on his character, because right now he's just a very soft boy. Really understands the value of being non-reactive, if that's a good way to put it. He understands the value of entertaining other people's perspectives, and while he doesn't let them change him, he does try his best to be considerate and understanding, or try to understand others. And I think that is a skill that we probably all need to try to develop a little more of, especially at NRC. I'm looking at everyone else on this list, but he doesn't let himself be completely overrun. He's not a doormat, and he does have very strict rules when it regards the people that he loves and the causes or things that he feels very strongly about. So I do like him. I just don't know if I like him enough to put him into Fancy Potato for this consideration. And I really want to know where he's going to go. And I think that that's going to make my determination of whether he's a Fancy Potato or Chaos Bean. Sebek, little Becky, little boy. Before I started streaming, I did not like Sebek. Sebek was a disappointment, and I could not fathom why people don't correct him on just the human thing. Him calling everyone a human and not calling anyone by their names and just being like, well, this is life. You have to accept it because you're just a human and I'm so much better than you, even though I'm half human. I hated that. And the initial characterization of Sebek, because at the time I only read vignettes where he was involved, and he was just such an asshole to everyone around him, including Silver. That was how he came across, and I hated him for so long. He's learning. He is learning. In book 7, he's learning. He's learning. And I love that for him. I think if Sebek was not the hydration sponsor for the stream, he would likely still be in Na or in the end of mid-tier. However, I have grown to love him so much more ever since the hydration game came to fruition. And the fact that Sebek has become much more of like a meme in my head because of this, and because of all the fun that we kind of have on stream with his character and just talking about little Becky, just having little Becky hanging out there. He has skyrocketed to Fancy Potato. In fact, he's above Kalim. He has skyrocketed from disappointment to Fancy Potato, and it is solely because of streams. I do appreciate where he is going with his character journey, and I do love that he is actually learning because he is spending so much more time with other people. I love that he is able to call out people on actual legitimate things that are wrong, but he needs to be called out more on his own bad action. And I think he's getting there. He's getting there. He's finally starting to get there. And I love that for him. I love that for him so much. Lilia Van Rouge. Oh, good lord. Where are we gonna put you? I think I'm going to put Lilia also in Fancy Potato, unfortunately. Fancy Potato between Sebek and Idia. I've liked Lilia for way longer. I think the fact that we get to see his past in book 7 makes him such a deep character. That and the fact that he's had, like 700 years to live his life. He's very lovely. He's much more, I think, he's very wise. He's very kind of adjusted, I think, to the way things work in the world. And how to kind of help the youth while also staying young himself. He definitely went through a lot, and he had like a journey that I feel I could relate to some parts of between, you know, the end of the war to where he is now. He's also just like a fun little guy. He just pops up all over the place. He plays little pranks. He plays pranks on Sebek. And yet he's also like, when it comes down to it, he will be serious and he will be forthright and he will have your back. Those are very fun qualities, I think, for him to have. He has so much duality, but I do think that that sometimes can come at a cost to his character because he is so many things that he doesn't have like a very defined structure. And I think you know, he has certain points in his life where he is much more defined. You know, General Lilia has a very specific vibe. Prankster Lilia has somewhat of a specific vibe as well, but he kind of can fall into a little bit of the past while in the present sometimes, I think. Like, he's not quite Chaos Bean tier. I know. I don't know. You know, he's lovely. He's delightful. Love the guy. He's just, there's just not that same connection for me as the Chaos Bean tier boys. We'll do a staff lightning round because I have an entire video over who I like the most for a certain context. Crowley, disappointment tier. Easy. Sam's a fancy potato. Vargas, nah. Cruel, Chaos Bean. Train, fancy potato. Lucius, Chaos Bean, 100%. Absolutely. You cannot convince me Lucius is in any other tier. But there you have it. That is where all of the NRC boys and staff are. I think I'm going to keep the event characters for later because there is one character that was included on this specific tier list that is coming very soon. And I think it would just be best for me to get all my thoughts out together on all of those guys. But thank you so much for watching till the end. This was delightful for me. I hope it was delightful for you. And let me know your thoughts in the comments about who you think is the bestest boys of all the boys and who you think should be in all the different tiers and all of that jazz as normal. And before you go, it would be great for you to like and subscribe, but I must also remind you that you're amazing and I hope you have a wonderful day.